Hello, welcome along to episode 283, I do believe, of Adventures in Pop. My name is Simon Jacobs, and you're looking great. I've been to the dentist this afternoon, so if I sound a little bit it's because I did have a completely numb half of my face. Now, luckily, it's kind of come back into action. Otherwise, it would all look very strange indeed. I'd probably have to postpone. But I can talk, and hopefully, some of what I say will make some sense to some people. In this episode, enough about me. In this episode, I want to talk about the steps that an independent musician, such as me, and maybe you as well, have to go through as we plan the release of an album. And the reason this has come up is I'm in that process now of thinking about all of the elements that go together to release an album, because I'm about to release what looks like being my 9th album. So by album 9, I think we have to assume that, I know a few things about what should be done. And I've got to tell you straight away, I was not doing these things earlier on. So I've got here by a process of, trial and error and quite a lot of error, really. So by now, though, I think there are some really basic things. Nothing I'm going to say here is going to blow your mind that much, because I think all of this is pretty obvious. And you could probably get away with not doing any of these things, but I think this is about having a kind of an orderly release that hits the points that you want it to hit, that gives you the best shot of getting the right kind of exposure for your music, making sure that you've given time for everything to get onto Spotify at the right time. And this is about thinking about the really practical elements of making sure the music is in the best shape it possibly can be, and that you've also applied yourself to the marketing effort as well. So all of that is included. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you 7 steps, the 7 steps to releasing an album, kind of in order, because there is an order to it. Obviously, you want to make sure you've got all the music ready before you worry about the marketing, but you do want to think about all of these things. So if you are in the next 6 months, a year, whatever it might be, thinking of releasing an album, this might be helpful to you. And it's certainly a list that I will continue to use for myself. Here we go. Releasing an album, 7 vital questions. In a way, it turns into kind of 7 steps. Number 1, you're releasing an album. Are you ready with at least 12 good songs that you are absolutely confident of? Now, this is a really interesting one, because right from the very get-go, I remember going to a conference at the huge Excel Centre in London years back. And probably the only good advice I came away with from a whole afternoon of feeling a bit out of my depth was somebody stood up on a stage and said, listen, if you're going to release an album with 10 tracks or 12 tracks, 15 tracks, whatever it is, then you need to make sure you've got 25, 30 good songs that you select from, because unless you are actually a genius, you're probably not going to just write 12 songs and all of them be album ready. That would be unusual. So the very first thing is, when you think to yourself, oh, I'm going to release an album, do you have enough good songs? And yes, you might be thinking, I want 10 songs on my album, I want 12 songs, whatever it is. Anyone who's been watching this channel for any length of time knows that I've kind of always stuck to 12 songs per album. And that's kind of good for pop music if all of your songs are sort of around the 3 minutes and not too much longer stage. So then you've got a 40-minute or maybe 45-minute even album. That to me is the right length for an album. That's a guideline for me. You'll have your own guideline. All I'm saying here is, are those songs ready? And do you have a little bit in reserve in case, as you go through the mixing and mastering process, you start thinking this song isn't quite doing what I thought it was going to do. So let's assume for step one, you've got your tracks ready and you're happy with them, and maybe you've got 16 in the bag, knowing that you will release 12 of them. And even that 16, when I look at what I've been doing recently, I think I started with well over 30 that have been written over, quite an extensive period of time, but well over 30. I've then knocked that down to about 16 or 17. And what I'm going to do is probably mix and master all of those 16 and 17. And only when they're finally mastered will I make that final choice of 12 from 16 or 17. So this is I guess step two, and it's a really important one, which is each track fully mixed and mastered? So in order to kind of create a bit of consistency, I think it's quite a good idea to get them all up to a certain standard and then master them one after another. Also, it'll get you pretty good at mastering, won't it? I'm not going to describe what mastering is in this video, other than to say it's the final opportunity to make your songs sound radio ready, loud but not distorted, so they pop out of the radio or the playlist, whatever, and kind of hold their own with other tracks that will be around on that playlist. And part of the thing about mixing and mastering, I think, is also to give your songs a bit of a test drive. Have you played them in the car? Have you played them on a big stereo with big speakers? Have you played them on your earbuds? Have you played them to some friends even? Now, I'm always wary about the friends and family thing, because friends and family are the people who are least likely to be entirely honest with you. And they might, and they bring baggage, they bring knowledge of your entire life to it. And sometimes it's much, much better to have a complete stranger who you've never met before in your life, who doesn't know anything about you, say, oh, I like that one. That means something. That means more actually than the friends and family thing. But having said that, there are lots of different ways that you can give your tracks a bit of a test run. And what are we testing for here? What I would be testing for is, am I making the right decision about if there were 16 and 17, I'm choosing 12. Am I making the right decision about those 4 or 5 that I might be rejecting at this stage? That's really important. And the other thing is, you might test drive one of your tracks and get kind of a response that says, I really like the track, but I can't hear the words. I really like the track, but it's a bit muddy with those guitars doing what they're doing. So the test drive is partly so you choose the right tracks, but it's also, have you really made them as clear and as dynamic as you want to, as you can? Step 3 is getting very specific with a calendar and a release schedule. Now, I would imagine that what you will want to be doing is to release some singles from this album before you release the album. This is now the way that it tends to operate pretty much everywhere. But there are still some questions. How many singles are you going to release before the album? Again, people who've been, following what I've been doing over the last couple of years will know that, on the whole, recently, I have been releasing pretty much the whole album before I release the album. So certainly 10 singles. I've done that for a few albums in a row. And the good thing about that is it gives every single a chance to be sent to the Spotify, editorial board, where they might want to put it on to Discover Weekly or whatever. At least it, brings it to their attention. The downside is that it can take a year or more, depending on exactly how frequently those singles are released, to get your whole album out. And that can just lead to you having a huge stack of tracks piling up, ready to go for next time. But I guess also it could get your audience a little bit bored with, another track from the same album. And just giving them one song at a time, and that I guess could maybe their endurance might be tested by this, but you know, I really don't think there's a right and a wrong here. So you might want to release 10 tracks from your 12-track album, or you might want to do what I did on the most recent time, because I was advised to do this by the people I was working with in terms of doing some promotion. And I actually released 5 singles before the album, and then there were 7 singles left. But whatever, this is the moment to actually get your calendar out and say, okay, the first single's going to be here, February, for the sake of argument. Second one here on this day in March. Remember, release days are Fridays on Spotify, and you need to give Spotify a few weeks' notice for every release. So it does become quite useful to actually make some notes on a time planner and in your diary, in your calendar, of which days you're going to release which tracks, which days you have to send it to them, how many of them you're going to release before the album, etc. The frequency, how long you put between singles, is also quite an important point. Now, there are plenty of people on YouTube I've seen talking about how, particularly in the early part of their careers, they're putting out a track every 2 weeks, every week even. Now, I think that is kind of overload. I don't think most people can keep up with that kind of level, neither the artist nor the audience, if you see what I mean. But every 4 weeks is pretty good. On the other hand, though, if a single really takes off, sometimes you might want to give it slightly more than 4 weeks, and sometimes every 6 weeks is really good. But look, that's the kind of area that you're working in. But you need to make those decisions and be very comfortable with what you're doing and know which order you're releasing them in and what the dates are going to be, and make sure all of that is noted. Okay? So, step 4. What's your album called? What's the theme? Have you thought about the artwork yet? Have you thought about the artwork for the singles? And will there be a theme, a brand of some kind that shows the audience that all of those singles are coming from the same album? Now, again, if you watch what I've been doing recently, and I promise you, this is not the way to do it. This is just a way to do it. I've always thought about what the album's going to be called sometime in advance. Actually, it's one of the things I find quite interesting and fun to do. What's the album going to be called? Once I've thought of a theme for the album, certainly the title of the album, then I'm thinking, okay, so how does this look? How am I going to visualize this for an album cover? And then how am I going to sort of borrow from that album cover a number of singles? And obviously this could be 5, could be 10. So you've got to have lots of variations on a theme, I think. And look, let me show you. I'll go back and just show you randomly. I'll show you from 5, my album 5, just to show you how I was managing the artwork. And it's very obvious, all of my singles look virtually identical. There's some colour differences, and obviously the title of the single is different, but it's very clear that they all come from the same group. And just while I'm being very honest and disclosing with you, my next album this is an exclusive, might be called Anthemic. 8th album was called Organic, 9th Anthemic. So once I thought, okay, anthemic's quite a nice word, anthems, and what does that mean and what does it look like? I started to think about the artwork for the album, and I'll share with you, this is an early prototype and it might change. I'm not even going to explain it too much, but I'll just show it to you. And then from this, I would need to start thinking, how am I going to use that for a bunch of singles? And I haven't worked out yet what the singles are, in what order, when they're going to be released. I'm still actually on step 1 for Anthemic. I am still making sure I've got 12 good songs and probably going to mix and master 16 or 17. So now we've reached the point where you've got the music, you've got the look and feel of your branding, your art. And now we need to think about marketing. And so my last 3 points are really marketing related. Step 5, have you established a promotional budget? Have you thought about what you're going to do by way of promotion and how that's going to work? Because this is the moment to think about that. How much can you afford? There's no right and wrong answer here at all, of course. And the more you can afford, the bigger the promotion might be. But sometimes we have to make not very much go a long way. And I totally get that. So maybe you're not going to promote every track. Maybe you might promote every other track. Maybe you might put all of your promotion into just a couple of tracks. Or you're going to spread it out across lots and lots. And when we talk about promotional budget, I think at the same time, you would probably be needing to think, how does that money get spent? Because there are good ways and bad ways. Good ways would be to, use very established places where you can advertise. And I'm talking about, Facebook, Google advertising, etc. Not using the cowboy services that you might discover on your travels around the internet. So be really careful with that. Have you established a promotional budget? Yes, that's great. And then number 6 is being really clear in your mind about what you're trying to achieve with this release. Where are you in your journey? Is this album number 1, in which case you're trying to just establish a little bit of an audience? Is this album 10, and you've already got an audience, and you're just building on already prior success? It does make a big difference. So what are you trying to achieve with the release? Are you trying to build up an audience? Are you trying to get the Spotify algorithm to know you and to start working on your behalf? Then it goes back to talking about some of the popularity scores that trigger the algorithm on Spotify. We talked about popularity scores before, and of course that you need to go to a website like musicstacks.com to discover what your popularity score is for each of your releases, because Spotify themselves won't tell you. But these things are important, and they will guide the way, the means of your marketing. They will guide the way you do the marketing, how much you put into various parts of that, over what amount of time, etc. Finally, step 7, have you updated your brand? And we're talking about, by brand, I mean, the look and feel of all of the things that are about you that go out on any social media platform. So whether you're talking about TikTok or Instagram or YouTube or X or Facebook, whatever, or your own website, even better, there should be a consistency of look and feel that ties into the look and feel of this latest release. So that every time you release an album, you update all of these various places. I'm talking Spotify, right through to, as I say, you're dancing on TikTok. So all of that needs to be updated to reflect the new look of this new album and the new music you're about to put out. And it's a fun thing to do. There are different ways you can do that. You can try and find some different takes on that look and feel that relates very closely to the artwork that people will see on your album and on your singles. Whew. That sounds like each one of those steps actually is not that difficult. But when you put it all together, that sounds like, there's a lot of work. And I think actually there is a lot of work. Doing all of these 7 steps, sadly, doesn't guarantee that you're going to have a worldwide monster hit. Wouldn't that be lovely? If you don't do these 7 things, though, I think you really, you're going to get yourself in a confusion at some point. Or there'll just be confusion maybe amongst your audience of trying to understand who you are, what the brand is, how it all kind of ties together. So try and make it easy for your audience, and they'll find it easier to love you. There we go. That's my best advice here. I wish you a lovely week. I'll be back with music probably next time. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me. Do subscribe and like and do all of those things as you so often do, and I very much appreciate it. You take care. I'll see you next time.